I certainly have a ton of shit that I sample that I would never spin out because I don't know if anybody would appreciate it. What we consider hip hop today isn't even close to the original, you know? Whether or not you like where hip hop is today or not, it's, you know, it'll be somewhere different in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And
yeah, hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. So yeah, could you kind of give us a walk around your studio and how you kind of organize your records, the color codes, the amounts? That's what Paulie needs to call us.
So in terms of actual records, these actually aren't any sort of significance other than records that have dope samples on them. Total of roughly 4,000 records, alphabetized, starting with funk and soul, ends about here, then gospel, then it goes jazz, and then it's like weird, obscure, synth, library type records. All of funk and soul is alphabetized, all of jazz is alphabetized. This stuff I don't have alphabetized because it's smaller. It's usually like it's like, I think there's like 6 major artists in there and the rest are like individual records. You know, here you'd have Stevie Wonder, all the Motown stuff like by artists. Like I don't go like, hey, here's Stevie Wonder, here's the first one, second record, third, fourth. I'm not quite that OCD. I think somebody like a Madlib or a Dilla that has so many records, they just know where their records are. I mean, I've seen interviews where like Dilla sent people to go grab records from his house and it's like, hey, 3rd shelf up, 6th record in, from the right, you know, that kind of shit. I play music that I like, that's good music. In terms of DJing though, I also have a ton of stuff that I don't necessarily enjoy that I have for certain gigs that I think that you are very short-sighted if you're only playing one genre of music. Real revolution in terms of beat, in terms of digging, all changed with DJ Shadow's Introducing album. And up to that point, people were digging deep, but not as deep as he did. I mean, he was pulling stuff out that nobody knew. Like nobody. Like there may have been some guys that were pulling some stuff that very few knew. That guy was pulling stuff that nobody knew.
Right.
And all genres, all across the board, rock, jazz, hip hop, blues. I mean, sampling stuff that was just, what is this? Where did it come from? What country is it from? And that really spawned a whole new wave of producers and artists and creative people within hip hop that were coming with stuff that wasn't just boom bap or classic or West Coast. It was a melting pot of all kinds of genres.
Yeah.
J Dilla, Madlib, Black Milk, Alchemist in terms of like producers. In terms of artists, you know, like I don't think if you don't have that, I don't think a Danny Brown shows up on the scene. Somebody that's kind of left field. The cool kids probably don't happen. DJ Shadow's Introducing opened up for a no holds bar approach to the genre. Digging for very rare records to sample, very obscure samples. You know, Indian records, Middle Eastern records, African records, weird stuff that was gospel that nobody knew, South American, Brazilian, I mean, all of that stuff. And then it really led into DJ Shadow's album, Introducing, being kind of this pinnacle digging record. The samples were, nobody knew them, so it was completely unknown, and established an actual platform for producers to make instrumental albums only.
Right.
Where hey, these aren't necessarily for MCs to necessarily rap over. They could, but these are actual full compositions, you know.
Right. So yeah, this is a Simply Red one.
Simply Red one. So this was actually, believe it or not, was sampled from their newest record, which came out in like 2014.
Yeah, I'm not surprised I didn't recognize the beat at the beginning.
And there was no vinyl for it, so I had to sample the CD, which was the first time I've ever sampled a CD.
How do you pull that off?
CD, like a CD turntable, ran it through. This was actually way faster, and it was slowed down. When I kind of heard it out, it kind of caught both of our ears, but then I was like, this sounds like it could be like some southern like UGK, like Outkast, like type thing or whatever. So for this one, it's mostly a loop. There is a little change up in between, and there's a sample chop that comes in on the hook. But I left the drums pretty raw, so they're mostly from the sample. The snaps are like something I added. That like the hi hat, something I added. Those chimes I added. The
And you do this all through a program online or through like any form?
So I use Machine, which is comes with a program that allows you to build, but it is got it like an external, obviously, hardware that you can use to build.
Like remote control almost?
Yeah, so like you can load samples and play the pads and recreate and chop up and move and rearrange.
Right.
So
and what's the name of the program?
It's called, well, the Machine, and it comes with its own Machine software. So I'll build most everything here, or get my ideas here. Sometimes I'll drag them into Pro Tools. Sometimes I'll go into Ableton. Sometimes I like the way they sound just off of this, so I'll just keep it on here.
So it was all DIY, kind of the way you learn how to do this?
Yeah. And learning originally was, it took me hours to make beats sometimes.
Yeah,
and not even complex beats, but just hours because I didn't know what I was doing.
And you had to go like on
and I had
YouTube
to, I didn't even, I mean, I did that, but I didn't even really do that. I just kind of, some of that was like over my head because like either there was stuff that for that particular person came prior to that video that maybe I didn't have access to or something. So some pieces I took from there. A lot of times it was just me testing. There were a few buddies of mine that used this in particular, so I asked them some questions. But most of it was just kind of trial and error. And the nice thing about the computer and this with trial and error is you can trial and error without it using up a lot of space and memory.
Right.
Whereas like if you had like an MPC or an SP12 like or a 303, 1200, all that kind of stuff, your sample time is so small. So you can only do so much. You can only test things, you know, so you kind of had to be, I don't know, you had to be a little bit more specific about what you were going to do with those, whereas this is kind of endless. You can do a million different things, see how they sound, and then discard whatever you don't want without it bogging down or anything like that. So
right.
I have other machines, and I've used those, but I still use this as a preferred.
And how would you say that like not having any formal training with percussion or instruments has kind of like, how do you say that you've been able to work around that?
Well, drums, I think, and creating and making wasn't that difficult in the sense that because I was a DJ before I was a producer, I knew what stuff should sound like.
Right.
But doing your own drums live is difficult to be on beat, and it takes a while to learn that and to get comfortable with it. One thing I still struggle with is doing bass lines, and some of it is just like, I think that kind of stuff either comes natural or it's something that you have to kind of work at.
Right.
Specifically, like matching keys with your bass and understanding what notes are within those keys. Some of it was learning that because I just didn't know it. And some of it is like, bass lines to me are unique in that you don't have to follow the rhythm of the drums. You can make up your own rhythm within that. So sometimes, it's a matter of figuring out what sounds good, how you want to complement different sounds within the track. But sampling and chopping and doing drums and matching that stuff up kind of came fairly easy. It's like all the other stuff, whether it be a bass line or adding in some sort of melody or whatever, doing keys. That stuff is stuff that, for me, it took me a while to kind of get comfortable with.
Right. So give us an example of another beat.
Alright, let me see what else we got.
Anything new you've been working on?
The newer stuff's in the other program.
Oh.
So let's go with this one. So this was not a very common record. I shouldn't say common, but it was common. And actually is like late 70s, early 80s. So it's a time frame when there wasn't a ton of really good shit that you could say, or you kind of got to find those diamonds in the rough.
Right.
But this was a one tracker on the record, like. And it's been sampled, but I kind of flipped it different. But this one was pretty chopped up and pretty rearranged, especially the horns. And then it kind of changes. For the hook quite a bit, and it was part of the artist that used this before only used this part and didn't really use the next part that's coming up.
Yeah, you definitely used that one. Who did you use that one with?
This is Coney Island.
Yeah.
So this was originally a track that I just made because I didn't have plan on putting anybody on it, and then he had heard it and wanted to be on, use it. But this was kind of unique in that it's two different completely parts of the song. They're not even really close to one another. Had to like time stretch and make things kind of fit, and then rearranging like that vocal part. It like that's not how it sounds like on the actual record.
You had to like change almost the way that the vocals sound.
Yeah, so it was kind of different. I mean, drums. I added drums to this one more so than I did. No, this one I didn't. I just filtered. I can't play this because this isn't hooked up. So I filtered the drums for this and stacked it so that I didn't have to add any drums at all. Like all those drums are like that snare, the kicks are all from the sample, and that's like that was kind of something that I had kind of picked up from that Madlib would do a lot. He wouldn't add drums; he would just EQ the sample and stack it so that he could make like the drums come out. and have it not affect the way like the sample actually sounded. So I've done this more and more recently. One of the first DJ gigs Seamus and I ever had was at the Russell.
No, I don't know.
On
I think I was in
Halloween.
Kentucky at the
No,
time.
you were there. Because the next year, Celia came with you.
Big baby puppy.
She was my baby puppy.
She was wearing one of you was wearing a duck outfit.
We both wearing duck outfits.
Yeah.
That was there?
Yeah.
Was that the Russell?
Oh yeah.
I don't remember. I remember us dressing up as ducks, but I don't remember who the fuck we went that night.
Yep, the Russell. One of the coolest events and DJ gigs I ever had was at the Russell. At his art space. Two of the coolest gigs I ever had.
I feel like I kind of remember one of them.